Let's be honest, the Genesis library is pretty hefty with great racing games. Outrun and Super Hang-On alone are some of the greatest arcade racers of all time. So I'm not just going to come out here and say Road Rash is the best racing game on the system, but it might just be the most fun. And also, it's the best one. Road Rash. This game is, it's deranged, really. Who knew all Hang-On needed was the ability to beat the snot out of everyone else on the track. Character is really where Road Rash shines, which ain't no problem at all since it is chock full of it. Just look at the competition in this game, so full of macho, super badass 80s types like Axel, Viper, and Broomhilda.
I am so fast. Sometimes it scares me. So I close my eyes.
You'd better not be one of those biker types. I'm out to get me a rasher.
But I'm getting ahead of myself. What the hell is this game? Road Rash is a unique arcade-style racer developed and published by Electronic Arts. That's right, the same genius minds behind Simpsons Skateboarding for the Genesis in 1991. This was one of the first games EA ever made, and it was a massive hit, quickly becoming their most lucrative title to date. It started out as a sort of technical proof of concept. Director Carl May was charged with creating a video game that could simulate roads with turns banked the way you might see in a NASCAR stadium or something. You see, early racing titles were all faced with one big conundrum. How can we convince a player that they aren't going fast when video games look like? Arguably the first essential element was sprite scaling, which allowed non-static graphical elements to embiggen or smallify without a loss in performance. That technique is how you get roads with convincing depth before 3D graphics. But roads aren't just flat, endless horizons, right? They billow. They have peaks and troughs and turns, banked turns.
Turn?
And emulating that was EA's goal. Development started on the NES before May decided it wasn't capable of such a feat, go figure, so he switched to the more powerful Genesis, which was hot off the presses at the time.
Now, when you buy the Sega Genesis that comes with Sonic 1, you'll get Sonic 2 absolutely free. Sonic 2 handles stubborn stains, embarrassing bald spots, no problem. It even slices and dices, makes thousands of julienne fries. But wait, you can play it too.
And somewhere along the way, they decided you should also be able to kick people in the head. All of a sudden, they had a game. And that's the story of Road Rash. So, how does it play? Well, it feels great. It feels pretty typical for the time, admittedly, if you just focus on the core racing. You start as an adrenaline-fueled caboose ready to rocket your way to the front of the race before the timers run out. You can accelerate and you can turn. Take it or leave it. Steering in this game is tight, very tight, so be ready to tap that button pretty gently if you want workable results. On the way to the finish line, you'll be greeted with a variety of hazards as well. There's gunk on the roads, incoming cars from both directions, road signs, stupid-ass nature gets in your way, and of course your fellow racers, of which there are 14. Unlike most other racing games from the time, they are not content with sportsmanlike behavior, and they will try to break your bones. Fortunately, you can do it back. This is the central conceit of Road Rash, and it's its main selling point. This game has combat. It's primitive, admittedly, but it's certainly a laugh. I don't know, there's something kind of ridiculous about this, don't you think? You can take a swing at other racers, whether a punch or a baton, and try to knock them off their bike, giving you one less thing to worry about on the road. It's definitely finicky, actually trying to hit people, and sometimes feels like it just distracts you from driving, but it feels more like a silly adornment than a core gameplay feature. It's kind of a recurring theme with Road Rash. The thing that keeps me coming back to this game is less about the core gameplay, and more to do with how much it makes me laugh. That's really my main takeaway every time I play. The other major trouble on the road is the occasional cop. If you happen to fall off your bike in their presence, possibly injuring every region of your body, they'll arrest you. So be extra vigilant around them. Be vigilant around any hazards though, since it can put serious dents into any run to hit a single obstacle. After you spend a minute dramatically flying off your bike, you've got to back to it, and you can just feel the seconds piling on as this process carries out. But that's really the long and short of it. This game is not complicated, and I respect that, especially since it's just one of many uncomplicated racers from this era. If anything, it's impressive they managed to get it to feel so good on the Genesis in 1991. Remember how I said they picked this console because of the technology? Well, the Genesis didn't actually have sprite scaling tech on board. That had to be done on the software side, which is why not that many games took advantage of it. If anything, though, that further drives home how Road Rash was the technical showcase EA wanted, and a deeply enjoyable game to boot. Races are frenetic and mesmerizing, the sheer hums of the bike distracting little from the game's exceptional core loop. It's just a good time, skating narrowly around cars at light speed, eyes fixed on the horizon, slowly feeling out the small nuances of how quickly you can take a turn on different bikes, eager to improve your times and complete the next round of races on the game's 5 tracks. And you will need to improve to do that. This game gets hard, and your starting bike will leave you an unconvincing competitor as the difficulty increases. Once you complete enough races in 3rd place or higher, the difficulty will go up. The first 2 aren't too bad, but after that it's pretty rough. Thankfully, as you earn money, you can purchase additional bikes. Not only do these change your racer's appearance, but also your handling and speed capabilities. These will be essential as the margin for error grows narrower and narrower over the course of the game. I suppose I don't strictly mind how hard this game gets, as there's not really a point to winning, and the appeal of the game is the core racing. But if you're the real completionist type, get ready to cut your teeth on this one for a while. The only other real bone I have is with the track variety. There's not much of it. I like the way these roads have big peaks and troughs. It actually lends a lot to this game's feel, but they don't manage to get much variety out of the looks here, especially compared to something like Outrun, for example. They look nice, don't get me wrong, but the California countryside this game is tributing has a little more going on than green hills and one level that isn't green hills. But don't get me wrong, presentation is overall a strong point for this game. As I mentioned before, the real-time scaling looks really good. The sprites aren't mind-blowing today, but they're detailed and animate well. The different bikes are a nice touch, and I love the sense of speed as you blaze past a million painted lines. I've heard people say this game looks choppy, and I get it, but you're only going to get so much out of a game from this era and this style, you know? Personally, I think it looks pretty good overall. Maybe it could have used a little more juice. I don't know. Speaking of juice, let's talk music. Composed by Ron Hubbard, the OST here is, in my opinion, very strong. It is a little grating by today's standards, and I know some people hate the music in Road Rash, but I think the strength of the songwriting here outweighs the slightly janky sound. The composer, Hubbard, is mostly known for his work writing for systems like the Commodore 64. And if you're not aware, composing music on a Commodore 64 is like doing a watercolor painting with a tube of Go-Gurt. I joke, sort of. The SID chips in the C64 were great for their time, but by today's standards they are ridiculously inhibited by the tech limitations. The Genesis didn't have it quite as bad, but folks were still figuring out how to color inside the lines here. With that in mind, I think you could argue this is somewhat of an early benchmark musically. You can still feel this stuff hitting a ceiling, but it sounds pretty good to my ears, and what it doesn't have in flashy, crispy audio, it has in damn good writing. These are razor-sharp rock tunes, through and through, and you get a crystal clear picture of what records these guys were flipping through for inspiration. Chiptune guitars duel and sway over drums which thunder beneath them. Well, you know, they try to, anyway. The game has this hypnotic, slow-burning quality, as most good arcade games ought to, and the songs are just grooving enough not to get boring after a million replays. And that's kind of what I have to say about Road Rash in a nutshell. It's fun to go fast, man. It's also fun to smack people upside the head, and this game lets you do both. It's a great Genesis title, and it's really effective proof that some gameplay just does not age. It's aged a little, but so have you old knucklehead. Oh boy, that's Road Rash. Have you played it? Do you hate it? Let me know before I go straight up freaking bananas. Hit subscribe for more goodies, and thanks for watching. I hope your day is lovely beyond lovely. Bye-bye.